Hi, welcome to another Ramble here on the channel, and this week, as I promised last week, I'm gonna be talking about the combat achievements, which just came to, I guess, combat mastery achievements, whatever the fuck they decided to call them, for RuneScape 3 specifically, because old school RuneScape has had them, and RuneScape 3 just said, yeah, we're just gonna steal that, and honestly, good thing. I think games should do that shit more often. I think they should just look at one another and go, that content's pretty cool. Does it fit our game? Yeah, we're gonna fucking steal it. Because who gives a fuck, honestly? If it's fun content, I don't give a fuck doing it twice. You know, I only give a fuck doing it twice if it's not fun content. Combat achievements, pretty fun from what I say, or from what I see. Now, here's the thing, I specifically wanted to wait until they were released to try and understand specifically how they were going to organize it. This is because, if you don't know, like a year ago, I made a video on the combat achievements being bad in old school RuneScape. Now, to be fair, it was a clickbaity article, or it was a clickbaity title, right? I didn't mean that the achievements themselves were bad, I just meant that, you know, there were things that I didn't like as much, and there were things that, in my opinion, could be improved, and I gave a bunch of improvements of things that, you know, pretty much I just do whatever the fuck I usually do, which is, hey, this is wrong because I think of this, and as a result, I think if you did this, it would improve it. Basically, that's what I did. Ironically, I was going to record the audio for this, and I just got a comment on that video complaining about one of the things that I pretty much pointed in the video was going to happen, which ended up happening. Now, here's the thing, I'm not saying that RuneScape 3 does everything the same, obviously there's some things that are different. However, and one of the major ones in my opinion is the way that you get the rewards. One of the things I pointed out in that video was how, essentially, it's a nice idea. Problem. The more content you add to the game, the more PVM content you add to the game, the more some players will have to work to get the same rewards that people have already gotten before. It's essentially the same problem that old school has with the Lumberjane and Drainer achievement diaries. There's a step where you're required to make perform the quest cape emote at the wise old man's house. Problem is, if you're a new player, you're gonna have to do way more quests in order to be able to do that step than players that came before. I got a quest cape a few years ago, I don't have it anymore because I haven't done the newest quests like Desert Treasure 2 and stuff, so as a result, I shouldn't have the diary. But I do, I've already completed it, I still have the rewards for it. But a new player will have to go through all of those quests in order to have the exact same rewards I do. This is a problem with achievement diaries, or a problem with combat achievements as well, which is, if I get Grandmaster today, in 5 years when there's a lot more bosses and a lot more tasks to do, players will have to do way more tasks as a result in order to get the exact same rewards I'm already getting. Right, there's that problem with the design of it where essentially some players will have to work far more to get the exact same rewards. Obviously, especially when it comes to certain things in the game, like the trim comp cape, or the comp cape, or the quest cape, and stuff like that, I get it, you know, obviously they have new content, and if you want those specific capes, you need to, you know, get them again. But this is not necessarily a cape, because we're talking about a bunch of tiers and a bunch of achievements. Now, obviously, they didn't do it the same way with achievement diaries, because achievement diaries currently have the problem of, you cannot mess with them, otherwise you take away rewards from the players. Taking away rewards is never a good idea, adding more work for people that already have rewards, or the rewards, would just create a huge mess. And again, it's not fair for me to have to do 50 achievement diary tasks when someone only has to do 10 for the elite tier, for example. Combat achievements essentially run into the exact same issue, and that's an issue that, quite frankly, I did not expect RuneScape 3 to take care of, because ultimately, yeah, look, it's an hard issue to solve, because bosses, especially in RuneScape 3, are a huge part of the game. PVM content is a huge part of the game in general, so I cannot expect RuneScape 3 to just solve that problem type thing. Personally, and one of the problems, or one of the solutions rather, that I gave to that problem was to simply separate combat achievements from boss achievements. So in old school, you have like, it was over 90% of the tasks are boss tasks, even though the entire thing is called combat achievements. So my idea was separate both, and bosses have their own little like task list, and once you complete it, it's completed and you get the reward specific to that boss. That way, when you actually add new bosses into the game, you don't need to regain rewards for other bosses because you already have them. If I have the Grandmaster tier done and it gives me a, say, nice reward for Chambers of Xeric or whatever, if I only want to do Chambers of Xeric after that, why should I have to then do the new boss to get the rewards I already gained before? So that is essentially a problem that would be solved by just having, hey, these boss has these tasks, you complete these tasks, you get rewards for this boss, and that's it, right? Unless we make changes to this boss or whatever, your rewards are never taken away. And then, sure, combat achievements, obviously, as new monsters would come into the game, and even, you know, you'd still have some boss tasks and everything in there. Yeah, sure, some of the higher tiers will get taken away, but it would be at a far lower rate, so players wouldn't create as much fatigue in it, and, you know, it would just actually allow you to put a lot of the rewards much more focused on the general PVM and general Slayer, rather than, you know, some of them being boss rewards, but some others are not, so it's a bit confusing overall. RuneScape 3 rewards actually go a bit more into the bossing side of things than old school ones, but yeah, essentially that's what I would do in order to sort of solve that little issue. Obviously, in that video I didn't name other problems, I guess, that I saw with tasks in old school and everything. I don't think that all of them apply, or at least they don't apply correctly to RuneScape 3, you know, but again, I like the video. I think it has a lot of information, good information, especially if you want to go and watch it to compare it to RuneScape 3. Now, as far as of the because the thing is, I'm starting with a problem and I'm making it seem like combat achievements are really fucking bad, when in reality it's mostly an organizational problem than anything else, and it's a problem that in the future is gonna become a little bit worse. However, we gotta look at what it does well, and honestly, first of all, this is really good at promoting PVM. One of the best parts about combat achievements in old school RuneScape is that every level of PVM, be it entry, medium, late game, whatever, actually increased. Players started helping each other far more because now there's achievements to do, right? Players were much more incentivized to get into them, because just the fact that you have like a little tick, a little thing that you need to complete and tick off, just pushes people to try and complete it, right? At the end of the day, you know, RuneScape is very a lot about just ticking boxes and completing things, and obviously if you want to push people to do PVM, a good way of doing it is just give them incentives to do PVM by having them tick boxes and give them rewards for it, right? Another good thing, at least from the tasks I've seen, now a bit of a disclaimer, I'm not an expert in PVM, so I don't know truly how hard some of the tasks actually are. However, from what I've seen, some of especially the Grandmaster tasks do give a pretty good challenge to those who actually want it. One of the things RuneScape 3 players complain about all the time is new bosses just aren't challenging, blah 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 blah. Personally, I think that most players that complain about that tend to be players that are incredibly good at the game already, so it's incredibly hard to make content for them that is specific to them. I talked about this on my No Monkey video. Yeah, I think I made a lot of videos about the game, but on the No Monkey video, one of the issues that I brought up when it comes to designing content for the game is you never want to design content for a game where only like 10 or 20 players or the top 0.1% can complete it. Realistically, you want to design content that over half the player base can complete, with the caveat of you can complete it if you put in practice time, if you put in effort, if you have good gear and all of that, right? So for example, take the Inferno or take Zack in RuneScape 3. That is the type of content that is challenging, but it's the type of content that, while most players cannot do it, if you actually try and do it, if you put your effort into actually trying and complete it, if you have gear to complete it and everything, eventually you'll be able to, right? It's the type of content that pushes the players, but it's not a content that should be so punishing that only a very selected few can complete it. I understand MMORPG players have this allure with content that only a fraction of players can actually complete because of the prestige or whatever, but I think it's a bad philosophy to have in the game, because ultimately you're spending resources making content, so you want people to interact with that content. That's exactly the reason as to why a lot of skilling methods in RuneScape 3, as they were added, just gave way more XP per hour than the previous methods. I already explained my problem with that, so I'm not gonna get into that. But essentially, it's an incentive, right? You want to give players incentives to do things. So I don't think it's very wise to make content that has no incentives at all. Right, so I think that despite how hard some of these achievements are, at least from what I have been able to see, almost all of them seem to be doable as long as you put in enough effort into learning PvM and you have good gear and all of that, which basically they're achievable, it's my point. They're not the only 10 players ever can get this because they're the nerds that are super good at PvM or whatever and they spend thousands of hours doing PvM. They're more like, yeah, these are hard, you're gonna struggle, especially if you don't know how to do them and everything, but eventually you can get them. We made sure that the average player, quote unquote, with enough practice can actually get this. Like, you don't need to be wooks to get them type thing. And that's another cool thing about all of this, is that because you have the tiers prior to it, you're essentially sort of allured you're lured into doing PvM and slowly learning about it, and then by the time you actually need to tackle master or grandmaster tasks, you already have so much more experience than before you started. This is why easy tiers, medium tiers and all of that are so important as a building foundation to actually then build to you doing the more hardcore stuff. Before doing Chambers of Xeric in old school, you need to know how to do Barrows, you need to know how to do Zulrah, right? I mean, you don't need to, but it helps that you know how to do those, right? It's stepping stones. It's the same thing in RuneScape 3. I think that oftentimes people in RuneScape 3 look at endgame PvM and only think about like the super iron rages and everything and don't think, hey, you know, before you can do these enrage, you should be able to do this boss, and before you do this boss, you should be able... Like, I think that in RuneScape 3, a lot of people tend to shit on lower level PvM, especially lower level bossing content, right? Like, you can meme on Barrows all you want, but it's a good entry point of PvM for a lot of players, even in old school RuneScape, right? And the same goes for, you know, God Wars Dungeon 1. I know that it's super trivialized nowadays in RuneScape 3, but it's a nice entry point for players that aren't as experienced at PvM. Right? You need those stepping stones, you need that foundation being built before you can do the harder stuff. And I think that systems like this give a very good incentive for players to, yeah, sure, we have Grandmaster rewards, but we also have easy, you know, complete the easy first, and then by the time you actually worry about the Grandmasters, you've already done the easies, so you already have done the mediums, you already sort of are much more experienced at the game, and as a result you will find masters and grandmasters far easier to do, because it's the same shit. Like, when I was in old school, I mean, I'm still in old school, I don't know why I'm saying that, but when I was doing a lot of PvM content in that game, one of the things back then, like in 2017, which is when Chambers of Xeric came out, the content just seemed incredibly hard, and I was like, I'm never gonna be able to do that. You know, nowadays I just run Chamber sometimes for fun with my friend, and I run it with such shit gear, you know, I truly do just send it with Void sometimes, you know. It's not the best, but you know what I mean, it's like, it's much easier because over the years I did a lot more PvM content, you know, I've become a master at Zulrah, even though I'm not even like rank 1000 of KC or whatever, because goddamn people farm that boss a lot, right? I have way more experience in the game, so as a result Chambers is much easier, and eventually I learned it, and now Chambers is super easy to me, right? I mean, maybe not super easy, but it's far easier than, you know, what I anticipated being. It's the same thing with, you know, RuneScape 3. Now, as for the rewards, I actually love the blessing rewards, especially, for example, being able to choose rotation at Vorago and Barrow's Rise of the Six. I think it's the two rotations you can choose. Let's be honest, that's kind of a band-aid fix, you know, like... That, you know, that you shouldn't need to have RNG involved in rotations, especially when they are locked by time, especially when it comes to Araxer and Vorago, where the rotations just are weekly based, right? So if you like a specific rotation, you need to wait for a specific week in order to do it. I never liked that mechanic, and obviously this is a band-aid fix. But at the same time, a lot of the rewards in the game are band-aid fixes, you know, which actually makes it feel really good when you actually unlock the rewards. Because essentially, okay, this actually sucks to do, but if I unlock that reward, all of a sudden, it no longer sucks to do, so it feels much better to actually unlock the reward. So I really like this reward personally, and the thing that I really enjoyed was the fact that for you to get all of these rewards, you don't need Master or Grandmaster tier, you only need Elite. I think that's incredibly achievable for most players. I think it builds a very good foundation. And I mean, sure, I'm kind of like disappointed that Master and Grandmaster do not have actual rewards and they only have cosmetic rewards. Although, as I have mentioned in my Wilderness video, my Wilderness rework video that I made like in December, sometimes cosmetic rewards are rewards good enough that push players to still go for these things, right? And the system itself existing already pushes players to go for these things. So it's not entirely bad. I just wish they had like something there, especially because to me, compared to old school, like the amount of tasks you need to do, it doesn't seem to get that many rewards for it. Obviously, you know, there are more rewards that can come into the future, they can add more rewards to the entire combat achievements. Like, this is a huge overtaking. Like, I cannot like explain how huge of an overtaking this is. Obviously, I think this is exactly what the game needed. I think it's a huge content update. I feel sad that some players are looking at this and, you know, Jagex is kind of afraid of saying that this is a content update, but this is a content update, especially considering just the amount of work that all of this takes. Personally, I do think there's some issues with it, and personally, I would wish for there to, you know, be especially more rewards. I think that's really what this is lacking, especially given the amount of tasks you need to do. But overall, I'm pretty pleased. This is a very good foundation for the game, and I've already seen a lot of people that don't do PVM too much or barely touch PVM actually going after, you know, doing certain PVM, trying certain tasks out, going to bosses that they've never been at before and stuff like that just to try and get some of the tasks done. That's really cool. So I think it's already paying off. I think it's already, you know, doing the job of pushing people to do PVM and pushing people to experience PVM as a whole. So I think this is a massive dub for Jagex. I think this update is really fucking good, and honestly, I know we're in February, but I'm gonna say it, I think this is one of the best updates of the year for RuneScape 3.